Start. I'd like to tell you today about someone who was like a father to me, uh, who's my brother Don Prokop. And when my mother had been married about 20 years, she had two sons who were young men at the time, Don and Frank. But there were problems in the marriage, and she met a man who took advantage of the situation, and eventually, as it turned out, she left her husband for him and had two sons by him, Walt and myself, Walt being 3 years older than me. But even so, Don and Frank still loved us as if we were their full brothers, showing us attention and giving us gifts, even though we were the sons of the man who family. And as time went on, my father decided he didn't want the responsibility of the family he took on, and eventually he left my mother without any money or any other kind of support. But my brother Don, who was still single at the time, my brother Frank had already been married, decided to take us in and support us from then on. And around the time I was 10 years old, Don received a promotion at his job at the Small Business Administration, which required that we move from Yonkers near New York City to Syracuse in upstate New York. And we enjoyed a standard of living that wouldn't have been possible even in the best of circumstances with my father. Don gave me many things. I had braces on my teeth, and he sent me to college and other things that many fathers natural fathers wouldn't have even done for their sons. I always remember one time when we were having supper one night, we were kind of joking around, and the Paul McCartney song Yesterday came on the radio. Don began singing to it, word for word, throwing it himself into it in a way that he'd never had before, and I've never seen him do since. And from that point on, in the eyes of our family, Don owned that song, and we'd always kid him about it. But later on, many years later, looking back, I can better understand how he could relate to the words of that song. A young man, single, just beginning to come to the peak of his life and his career, who voluntarily took on such a burden from which there was no turning back. I guess there are two things that parents fear that might happen to their children. One is that they might they might join a religious cult. And another is they might pursue a career in acting. And as it turned out, I ended up doing both. My only regret is that I could have handled both situations a little better. But when I came into the Worldwide Church of God when I was in my early 20s, my conversion kicked in high gear in a way that it had begun in some ways as a Catholic as I was raised. And so I came, even though my mother and brother Don didn't agree with it, and yet they still supported me in many ways, not the least of which was financially. And I know that there are probably many evenings where my brother Don, who had no one there to support him, would, in the same way, would console my mother as to why her youngest son, her baby, would move so many miles away, which she could never understand. And after my mom passed away, I expected the generosity to stop there or greatly diminish. But again, more times than I would rather than have been necessary, if it was there. And I feel that if in this life I have any accomplishment of which I can feel proud of, it wouldn't have been possible without my brother Don. And I'd like to think I'm just getting started. And all of this was brought into focus recently, and about a year ago when Don was diagnosed as having prostate cancer. But thankfully, since then, he's been treated for it, and it looks to be in remission. Also, last time I went to visit him a couple of years ago, he introduced me to a lady friend of his that I was very happy about, because back when we were growing up, that would have been seen as a conflict for him to have a relationship like that. So I just want to share with you the most Christ-like example of unconditional love and commitment that I've ever seen or experienced. I plan to send him a tape of my little talk here, which I also gave a number of years back now at the Ambassador Auditorium. I felt proud to mention back then that it was from the stage that Pavarotti had performed, of whom Don is a fan, although this time the venue has changed. And I also pointed out that he would be seeing it on the same TV screen. He'd watched his favorite movie, Popeye, starring Robin Williams, many, many times. However, since then, he has now as a new favorite movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, with George Clooney, and he also has a brand new TV. So I don't know if he's watched either of them on that, so I have no idea where to go with that one, except to say, as I did back then, love you, Don.